Good afternoon, Tobago. Good Sunday afternoon to you. Good afternoon to those of you who are looking on from far and wide. I believe we are live virtually, so thank you for joining us here at the Office of the Chief Secretary on this beautiful sunny Sunday afternoon. We have been getting some extremely good weather. Certainly, we know that the dry season is here, given the level of dryness, sunlight that we're having access to. And we're just grateful for life at this point. Today at our press briefing, there are three areas I wish to cover. One of these areas, Secretary Petalan Roberts, the Secretary of Finance, will treat with force. So just broadly, I will speak about the CARICOM heads of government and what transpired there, particularly what transpired there for Tobago and the latest on our push for autonomy. Secondly, I will give some updates with the Blue Wave Harmony and the cargo ferry service. And finally, I'll make mention of the meeting that the entire executive had with the Chamber of Commerce last night. And in particular, we'll speak to one of the projects that started last fiscal year with the provision of some support for the business community in Tobago, how we have been refocusing that support in such a way to ensure Tobagonian and Tobago businesses can benefit. So the Secretary of Finance will give some updates and some details in that regard. So firstly, I want to start by again expressing gratitude to the Prime Minister for the invitation to attend CARICOM heads of government. This was a historic first for the Tobago House of Assembly, for any Chief Secretary. And it was not a case of just attending in terms of being there as a token, but attending and the Prime Minister allowing that I be credentialed as a delegate at the CARICOM heads of government meeting. And being credentialed as a delegate meant that I was not just there for the opening ceremony, but I was able to sit in the room alongside other heads of government across the region and or their representatives as important issues surrounding CARICOM and the Caribbean region, those were discussed. Secondly, in terms of our autonomy quest, well, while at St. Kitts Nevis, I had the benefit of meeting with the Premier of Nevis, the current Premier of Nevis, Mr. Mark Bentley, and I want to thank him for being so engaging and for going through with a fine-tooth comb all of the articles, all of the tenets of their autonomy, and we get to see the stark contrast with what happens in Trinidad and Tobago. Also, the stark contrast between what was in our parliament about a year or so ago, purporting to be the autonomy bills versus what actually exists in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I want to thank the Premier of Nevis for being so engaging. I was also fortunate to meet with Sir Kennedy Simmons. Sir Kennedy is a national hero in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that's the highest honor a Kittitian or someone from that country can get. And he was Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis at the time when they rolled out the constitutional changes to allow Nevis to get its autonomy. And of course, it was about how he worked along with the people of Nevis to ensure that their autonomy was realized, notwithstanding being from St. Kitts. And so I had very thought-provoking conversations with Sir Kennedy Simmons, who is 90 years old, by the way, but very sharp, and I'm really appreciative of those insights. Of course, while all of that was happening, we will simultaneously debating the issue in the House. And I just want to go over and be clear again. We have a multi-pronged approach, and very soon, perhaps in a week or so again, we will announce the start of our Constituent Assembly, or as is stated in the blueprint, the People's Parliament, that will allow for general public conversations on the matter. And I pointed out that everyone will be invited to the table to make presentations, to give their opinions on what it should look like, what it should feel like, what they would like to see happen. And while those conversations are ongoing, we will have the Secretary for Legal Affairs constituting a team of draftsmen that will simultaneously be codifying the things that you Tobagonians say you want in law. So that when that process is ended, we will give you Tobagonians draft. And as we give you those drafts for review, then we engage parliamentarians, and we're talking about those in the government side, the opposition side, and the independents in the Senate, to be part and parcel of those conversations too. So by the time we send proposed bills to Parliament, it will be ready to go directly on the Parliament's floor. And of course, part of that process will involve having the Chief Parliamentary Council at some point as part of our process here in Tobago. I want to also, while I'm talking about CARICOM heads of government, I know that there has been a lot of talk in this space, and even before the questions come from the media, I want to point out some things that the Prime Minister stated at the opening of CARICOM heads of government, and her position and her government's position on the matter. Notwithstanding the fact that the Tobago House Assembly doesn't have legal remit over international relations, and we really and truly don't make these decisions. But I want to point out some things, because I've realized in this space that we have a knack for trying to skew what really is. The Prime Minister pointed out that she nor her government nor Trinidad and Tobago is in support of leaders in CARICOM interfering in the internal elections and democratic processes of other countries. I don't know what's in that to not agree with. And the truth is, in recent times, we have started seeing all of a sudden Caribbean leaders going and campaigning, actually campaigning themselves, by campaigning for themselves in other jurisdictions. And of course, that brings difficulty in the relationship among CARICOM leaders. And I think that's a reasonable position to have. The second thing she pointed out is the matter with Mr. Brent. In fact, I'm seeing all the debate over semantics, over the use of the word kidnapping or abduction. But really and truly, it is the courts, our courts, a judge in court, that actually used the term abduction, that said that he was illegally removed. And if he was illegally removed using an RSS plane, and by the way, Trinidad and Tobago is not a signatory to the RSS, but using an RSS plane, which is a CARICOM asset, then I think CARICOM, in fact, has something to answer. Because our courts has said that it was illegal. The Barbadian government at one point admitted it was illegal. So why is that issue such a difficult one that ought not to be addressed? Then the principle of supporting democratic governments across the region, and saying, look, if you're a democratic government across the region, I support you. If you're not a democratic government across the region, I don't support you. That might be a very principled stand by the Prime Minister. And notwithstanding that, I don't think anyone is negating the fact that there is a humanitarian crisis in Cuba as we speak, and that crisis has to be treated with. And of course, the Prime Minister spoke about Venezuela threats to Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. You know, I was sitting in my corner here as Chief Secretary. No real authority over international relations, and looking at CARICOM when the threat started against Guyana first, and wondering, why is CARICOM not really taking decisive action? Why is CARICOM not being forceful? And then I see they try to have some kind of, I don't know, bear retreat and sit down and talk it out, almost pandering to Maduro. But Maduro is no more. Maduro is gone. And despite what people felt about the Prime Minister's international relations policies, the truth is she was right on Maduro. I remember at one time people were trying to invoke all sense of fear in the space, saying Venezuela got bombed, Venezuela will do this, we can't respond. And I continue to take as Tobago's position, and I want to be clear, notwithstanding me saying the Prime Minister is right on identifying these as an issue, and notwithstanding me respecting the Prime Minister's ability in law to make these decisions, and she is whom the people voted for. In fact, Trinidadians came out and they voted overwhelmingly for her. They did not vote for the other side. And she has that right. During the recently held campaign, and even now, I continue to adopt a position of neutrality. And I said it during the campaign, because when I walked and I talked to Tobagonians not so long ago, Tobagonians were clear in saying to me, don't get involved in nobody else's business. Let we just mind we business. And that continues to be our position, to adopt a position of neutrality. As a matter of fact, I've said, I don't care who is leader of where and how they get there. My international relations policies, I will do business with whomever is there. I am not one that care to get involved in any other country. I don't support us, meaning Trinidad and Tobago, sending any asset into any other country or trying to influence the outcomes in other countries. And I believe, as Chief Secretary representing the island of Tobago, we should continue to adopt that position and that stance of neutrality. And while we take that stance of neutrality, we recognize and we respect the Prime Minister's ability in law to make these international relation decisions. And more so, as I pointed out, those areas of concern as raised by the Prime Minister at the opening. I don't think any right-thinking Trinbagonian will think that those aren't issues that were, one, relevant, and two, that should be brought to the fore for conversation. Let me hasten to point out, as I round up on this issue, that while at CARICOM Heads of Government, some of the other areas that I was party to discussions on include when we had a representation from Saudi Arabia and the kinds of investments Saudi Arabia is making and still planning to make in the Caribbean and to Caribbean territories. I was also there for the conversations with the UAE. Of course, we had a representation from the UAE here not so long ago with the Honorable Minister of State, Ms. Nora, Her Excellency Nora, who was here on island in Tobago. She was also there at CARICOM Heads of Government. I was also there for the Afri-Exim Bank and the kinds of investment they want to make in the region. In fact, the Afri-Exim Bank, they stated clearly that they initially came into the region with $3 billion worth of investment, and they are intent on taking that all the way to $5 billion. I was there as we discussed the matter of the movement of Caribbean people, the labor shortages that might exist in the region, and whether or not the Caribbean should be looking outside of the Caribbean to partnerships with places such as countries in Africa for to meet the shortfall in terms of labor. I was able to not just be in the room, but to be the first Chief Secretary to speak in one of those sessions with the CARICOM Heads of Government. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity. Part of my intervention was to see if CARICOM could organize itself and have CARICOM sponsored, CARICOM backed platform that allows our young people across the region to be on top of job opportunities across the region even before we start looking outside of the Caribbean for these opportunities. Let me also point out that I was there as the U.S. Secretary of State made his presentation to CARICOM. I was not there for what I am sure was an intense conversation with the heads of government later that evening. In fact, later that said evening, I was en route to Nevis, because there's no way I would go to St. Kitts Nevis, being the leader of the smaller island here in our arrangement, and not go to the smaller island across there. So I opted to be in Nevis at that time, because of course me being at CARICOM Heads of Government was primarily because of the opportunity to look at synergies between the legislation we are trying to build out and the one that exists in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I've spoken to a range of issues here. The next area I want to bring some update on is the ferry, the inter-island cargo ferry. And by now you should be aware that passengers will be allowed on the ferry from tomorrow. So the first commercial sailing starts tomorrow, but a sailing I think should be happening today, leaving the port in Port of Spain at 2 p.m. But from tomorrow, the commercial sailings will happen. The schedule is out, and of course, persons are advised that they can buy their tickets the usual way. I took a look at the figures, because I started having the minister sending me daily an update on what is transported, and I'm noticing a pattern, and I want to point this out. So if you look at Friday's sailings had 182 vehicles. Friday's sailing had 30 trucks and trailers, 100 trucks, 21 vans, 11 cars, had 8 containers 20 feet in length. We had 8 flatbeds 40 feet in length. But if I go back to the previous days, I'm realizing a similar pattern. And it's something that I've spoken about before, and I will talk about it again, which is our autonomy insofar as how we feed ourselves. There's a reason why the division was renamed food security from just agriculture, because the objective is to achieve food security. And I spoke about it at the last presser we had on last Sunday, and I'm saying it again, that we have to work on warehousing. We have to work on factories and what we produce, because it cannot be that our permanent solution is to just have a boat that works all the time. That cannot be the solution. That cannot be how we achieve food security. And so I want to challenge folks, even in the private sector, that we need to go down that road. I don't know if it is that the THA should go and build the warehouses, that the THA should go and build the factories, because in other jurisdictions, that's the private sector that makes those investments, not the government. We're not running a communist government here. It's a democracy. This is not like some other countries where the government owns everything. And I don't know if after 45 years of the Tobago House of Assembly, we'll be 46-year-old this year, and I'm talking about the modern THA, 45 going on 46 years this year, and after having a THA as an institution in this space over 250 years, I don't know if we could pat ourselves on the back as an island and say, we have succeeded at this thing called food security. it is something that we absolutely have to look at. And of course, what we're looking at is how the THA can provide incentives and incentivize getting the private sector into doing the warehousing and doing the what is necessary so we can mass produce some of our goods here on island instead of just trying to bring everything to through the port in Port of Spain. And one more thing, when we came out with the plan to redo the port in Scarborough, and I want to remember the former was at a meeting in Mason Hall, and he said the chief secretary sent him about 20 pound of paper or 50 pound of paper. I can't remember how much it was. And he said, well, the only thing he's supporting in Tobago is the building of the Marriott. In that same statement. And I want you to remember it because as a government, we have been insisting that we have to fix our port in Scarborough. That we can't depend or rely on having all of our goods sail past us in Tobago, sail into Port of Spain, and then we now fight up to bring it from Port of Spain back to Tobago. What should be happening is that for the goods we need that we are importing from international partners, we should be able to do it directly to Tobago. And so that port development is still on the table, is still part of our blueprint. In the first 4 years, we did the feasibility studies, we did the modeling, we did the designs, we did public consultations on it. And so this 4 years, we are targeting that we must start such a build out. Of course, the challenge is just pinning down the funding. We have had persons, well, not persons, but firms being interested in funding. And of course, the matter to be worked out is getting a sovereign guarantee, or for the very least, some non-objection letters to allow us to proceed. Or above all of that, we just have our autonomy and we decide for ourselves what financial risks we will take up in that regard. A final thing from me is that yesterday evening, we met with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce wrote, as I told you last week that the Chamber wrote, the truckers wrote. So we met with the Chamber yesterday evening. The Chamber and the entire executive, the entire government, all secretaries and assistant secretaries were in the room. And we discussed their challenges, their successes. We discussed the program of work for the next 4 years, meaning the blueprint, the synergies we expect between the government and the business community. And also we look at some of the programs already implemented on behalf of the business community and where those are. And that's why we have the Secretary of Finance here, because last two fiscal, we started a program for a loan guarantee program a loan guarantee initiative for those in the business community. So they have access to funding and capital, and they have a moratorium of at least 6 months before they need to start repaying those loan monies. And we found that those applying to the program have been minimal. We understand what the challenges are, and I've asked the secretary to come and again point out how you access the program, what's involved in the program. I'll also have to identify what those challenges are, because it is disheartening that persons can't get into the program because they haven't been paying the taxes or haven't been paying NIS for their workers. I mean, come on, how do I justify using taxpayers' money to provide a program for you that you have a moratorium and you want access to the funding, but you have not been upholding your end of the bargain legally? Those are challenges. The Chamber of Commerce did commit to working with those in the business community to get them compliant with those basic things: paying your NIS, paying your taxes, etc., etc. And so I will at this time turn over to the Secretary of Finance. After she speaks, then I'll invite questions from members of the media.
Good afternoon, Tobago and our listening viewers. Chief Secretary, thank you for the opportunity again to be a part of this press conference. It is quite an important topic here, seeing what businesses are facing and the challenges that they are facing, and what the Division of Finance has in store for businesses in Tobago. This is just an update on the loan guarantee program. It's a facility that is really engineered and designed to assist business in accessing just security for loan financing at commercial banks. We are not offering a loan, it is just a guarantee facility. So it therefore means that you, registered businesses from Tobago, will go to your commercial banks, but you can access collateral from the Tobago House of Assembly. So I'll just go through the details of the program with you. But before I do that, as the Chief Secretary indicated, we did have a meeting with the Chamber, the executive of the Tobago arm of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and we highlighted some of the challenges as the persons subscribing to the loan guarantee program are quite minimal. As a matter of fact, we only have just persons applying to their banks. And what the commercial banks have been saying to us is that the businesses are not compliant with the normal lending criteria. And these criteria include compliance in paying income taxes, corporation taxes, business levy, green fund levy, as well as national insurance contributions for both employer and employee. So those are the challenges that we are facing, and one of the things that I've done, I've looked at the number of persons that have been applying to the program. I've recognized that persons were not reaching the criteria. So what I did, I reduced the minimum of the loan guarantee. At the time, sometime last year, when we started the program, the minimum was 750,000. I've since reduced it to 300,000. And that therefore means that you can go to the bank for a loan for about 375,000 and access loan guarantee of approximately 300,000. Let me say that again. You can go to your commercial bank for a loan at minimum 375 and access our loan guarantee program, or a guarantee or security or collateral of 300,000. I'll now go through for you the details of this program. So we have a loan guarantee program, and there are four parties to the program. The lender are you, the commercial banks, and we have 3 commercial banks subscribing to this program. So the partners with us are Republic Bank, Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago Limited, and First Citizens. And the main responsibility of the lender is to process the loan application in accordance with the bank's loan procedures and approve the loan accordingly. Ensure that the application is in line with the criteria set for the program. They are to notify the administrative agent, which is First Citizens Trust, of the request for the loan under the loan guarantee program. So it means after the loan process and the borrower wishes to access the loan guarantee program, what we will do, the bank, the commercial bank, will communicate with First Citizens Bank Trust Company. Another responsibility of the lender is to disperse the loan funds only upon the advice of the First Citizens Trust. They are to provide periodic reports to First Citizens on the loans granted under the guarantee program. They are to collect the loan repayments when due from the borrower. So the Tobago House of Assembly and First Citizens does not get involved in the repayments process, but the commercial banks for which the borrower went to. To notify the administrative agent or First Citizens should the borrower fail to repay the loan. The lender should effectively follow up on any borrower should the facility go into arrears. The lender should also seek repayments from the administrative agent, which is First Citizens Trustee, from the guarantee fund, should the borrower fail to repay the loan despite, and we have to show vigorous follow-up actions. And finally, the responsibility of the lender is to present the Tobago House of Assembly with evidence of the follow-up actions on delinquent accounts. The second party to this arrangement is the administrative agent, which is the First Citizens Bank Trustee Services Limited. And they are responsible for securing the guarantee funds into a special account, and I wish to advise and inform Tobagonians that we already have this escrow account with $12 million. Now, I held back in topping up this account because we have not been seeing the access to the loan guarantee, but it is the intention of this administration to provide a further $8 million in short order to bring the fund up to $20 million in the first instance. The First Citizens Bank Trustee Services Limited is responsible for maintaining a running balance of the value of the fund. They are also responsible for advising the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy of the Tobago House of Assembly of the applications received for financing under the Loan Guarantee Program. And at this point, I must say that the agent that the Tobago House of Assembly has assigned to execute this program is the Tobago Development Fund, which is a separate legal entity. It has been registered and it is up and running. So the Tobago Development Fund will be the agency or the vehicle to which we will actually do this fund. First Citizens Trustee is also responsible for advising the Tobago Development Fund when the fund needs to be replenished up to the total amount pledged. When we started the conversation on the Tobago Development Fund, the idea was to fund up to $60 million. And that was dependent on the allocations received from central government. We have since had an allocation for the Tobago Development Fund as well as the Loan Guarantee Program. So it is the intention to top it up in this year to $20 million in the first instance, as I said before. First Citizens Trustee Services Limited is also responsible for providing reports to the Tobago House of Assembly through the Tobago Development Fund on the number of loan applications received by the commercial banks, the total value of the loans granted, the total guarantee of the funds assigned, information on accounts that are in arrears, and details of the monies paid out of the fund due to the non-payment of the borrower. The third party to the fund is the borrower. And this is defined as a registered business, a partnership or company domiciled in Tobago. And this company must have a registered address here in Tobago and whose main operations are conducted on the island of Tobago. The other responsibility of the borrower is to ensure that you have been a going concern, or that means you have been an active business for 3 consecutive years prior to the date of the loan application. So it means that if you are to go to the bank on Monday to access the loan guarantee program, it means from about 2022, 2023, you should have been in operations. Started operations at least. Another responsibility of the borrower, which are you Tobagonians, Tobago registered business, is to have a majority or control by citizens or permanent residents of Trinidad and Tobago. And your annual revenues must be of at least 3 times the amount of the loan facility being requested. So it means that if you are going to the bank for a loan for $400,000, your annual revenue should be at least $1.2 million per year. The borrowers are to apply to any of the commercial banks. So please, my fellow people of Tobago, you are not to come to the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy or the Tobago Development Fund which is located at Jerningham Street, you have to go to the commercial banks, and I've said the commercial banks are Republic Bank, Scotiabank, and First Citizens Bank. Repay the loan in accordance with the terms and conditions of your commercial bank loan agreement. You are to use the loan proceeds strictly for eligible purposes defined by the program, such as for working capital, equipment purchases, to pay off outstanding debts to your suppliers. Misuse of loan funds can trigger default provisions of the loan agreement. It means that they can terminate the loan. In the event of delinquency or default, cooperate with the lender and, if applicable, the Tobago House of Assembly during the restructuring efforts. And the final party to this arrangement is the guarantor, which is the Tobago House of Assembly through the Division of Financial and the Economy, and we have assigned the Tobago Development Fund as the guarantor to this program. And this is a unit, a registered company under the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy, and will act as the primary liaison with stakeholders on matters pertaining to the program. Additionally, the Tobago Development Fund shall be responsible for conducting an annual review of the program and submitting recommendations for enhancement to me, the Secretary of Finance. So those are the parties to the fund. Please remember that you are first to go to your commercial banks, and the commercial banks will liaise with the administrative agent, which is the First Citizens Trust Services Limited, and they in turn will inform the Tobago House of Assembly of your accessing the loan guarantee program. Details of the loan guarantee program. The loan guarantee will cover up to 80% of the total loan amount. And as I said, the minimum loan guarantee is $300,000. So it means that your minimum loan to access the guarantee is approximately $375,000. There is a maximum loan guarantee of $3 million, which means that your maximum loan to access the program must be up to $3.75 million. So the minimum of the guarantee is $300,000, and the maximum of the guarantee is $3 million. We have asked the banks to consider certain criteria. Your loan term must be a maximum of 7 years, with a moratorium period of up to 6 months, with interest only or both interest and principal, depending on the lending institution's policy. Now, if the moratorium is granted, the loan term will begin after the moratorium has expired of, I said, a maximum 6 months. The interest rate will be the same as that calculated by the central government for the loan guarantee program on their end. And this is a special rate that is linked to the commercial prime lending rate and the central bank repo rate. The interest rate is calculated quarterly by the First Citizens Trustee Services Limited, and although the interest rate may change quarterly, the rate at which the loan is booked remains the same for the duration of the loan. This means that any change in the interest rate will only affect new loans currently at the rate of 4.28%. What type of loans are we allowing the loan guarantee to provide for? Demand loans, overdraft, and revolving type facilities. Now, the permissible loan purpose. So, please listen carefully to the purposes for which you can go to your commercial bank and access the loan guarantee program. The debts due to suppliers of businesses, for the purchase of raw materials for business use, for the purchase of supplies for resale, that means you want to stock up, you want to buy inventory or stock, working capital needs for up to a period of 12 months, refinancing existing loans of business entities that are seeking the guarantee, but it cannot be for another business or another company. For purchase, repairs, or maintenance to your machinery, equipment that are used in the operations of your business. The machinery or equipment should either increase your revenue generating capacity or reduce your current operating expenses and overall improve the profitability and cash flows of your business. The loan financing can be used to pay your outstanding debts to the Board of Inland Revenue and National Insurance Board, and the maximum amount of the loan proceeds can be applied to your, as you said, your debts, and the debt shall be above $25,000. Listen carefully to where we will not be funding these purposes under the loan guarantee program. So you cannot go to the bank and access funding for real estate. We will not be providing guarantee for that. The repayment of outstanding loans or financial obligations owed to your shareholders, directors, or entities affiliated with the borrower. Procurement of assets intended to be used by a third party or not directly used for the operational activities of the approved borrower. We will not be allowing you to use our loan guarantee program to pay dividends to shareholders. You cannot access the loan guarantee programs to settle any legal fees on behalf of your business, its shareholders, and/or your directors. You cannot use the loan guarantee program to pay any judgment debts owed by business, the shareholders, or directors. We will not allow you to use our loan guarantee program to purchase personal items or consumer-related expenses for shareholders and/or directors. The documentary requirements we expect our companies to abide by when you are going to your commercial bank: your certificate of incorporation, certificate of beneficial owner, the company's bylaws, notice of your directors and secretary, and your annual returns, company returns. You must show evidence of your registration of your National Insurance Board and the Board of Inland Revenue, your company registration for VAT, pay as you earn, and health surcharge. You must also show official evidence that payments that are due to the Board of Inland Revenue are paid up to September 2024. So you must show that your Board of Inland Revenue and your national insurance contributions are paid up to 2 years ago, September 30th, or a year and a half, 2024. If your payments are not up to date, you can show evidence that you have been in some kind of payment arrangement with the relevant agency, together with a statement showing that payments due under the plan, under the Board of Inland Revenue and the National Insurance Board are actually up to date. Your financial reports, we expect that you will provide to your bankers management accounts for the past 3 years, not audited accounts, but your management accounts for the past 3 years. Bank statements for the past 3 years, your current receivables and payables listing, aged by your outstanding periods, your 3-year cash flow projections, and this must detail the business expenses, your salaries, your payments for your inventory, payment of utilities, payments due to existing loans that you have for the business, payments due for any new facility that you intend to access, like the loan guarantee program, and amounts due under payment plan to the Board of Inland Revenue and/or the National Insurance Board. We expect that you will provide also 2 forms of national identification of each shareholder or director and the utility bill for each shareholder and or director where applicable. Now, the maximum number of guarantees. So this is, I'm going to speak to you now about the maximum number of times, which is only one single time that you can access this guarantee program. The borrower shall not be eligible to access any additional loan under this program until the initial loan has been fully repaid, and you have up to 7 years. Furthermore, only one guarantee shall be granted to a borrower group. So for instance, you may have a group of companies, company A and B. You cannot have the same company under the group apply for the loan guarantee program. Only one of the entities may benefit from the guarantee at any given point in time. Now, we will conduct an assessment during the period, and that assessment will be done via the Business Development Unit. And this assessment will include a review of the status of the borrowings, specifically whether that they are being repaid or are fully repaid. Where outstanding obligations remain, discussions will be initiated with the borrower to determine an appropriate resolution. Unresolved liabilities may adversely affect the borrower's eligibility for participation in the guarantee program, and as such, matters directly reflect their creditworthiness and overall credibility. Now, let me go through the application process. The prospective borrower, any registered business in Tobago, may be partnership, company, or sole trader, submits a loan application to any one of the participating commercial banks, namely First Citizens, Republic Bank, or Scotiabank. Upon processing the application, the bank determines whether the loan guarantee is required. Now, you may go to your bank and you may have the collateral, so it means that you may not necessarily need to access this facility under the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, if a guarantee is deemed necessary, the bank informs the First Citizens Trustee Services Limited of the application details and formally requests the guarantee. The First Citizens Trustee Services Limited notifies the Tobago House of Assembly through the Tobago Development Fund. Now, the Tobago Development Fund then undertakes internal due diligence to assess whether the applicant or any of its principal of business has any outstanding obligations to the THA through the business development. We have a loan program as well as the Venture Capital Equity Fund Limited. We offer equity financing at the Division of Finance. So we will do our due diligence to ensure that the person accessing the loan guarantee do not have any outstanding obligations with any of these facilities under the Tobago House of Assembly, and whether such obligations are being serviced or are in accordance with the financing agreements. If unresolved liabilities are identified, the Tobago Development Fund engages the relevant parties to determine the appropriate corrective action. And this engagement is critical to assessing the applicant's eligibility to participate in the loan guarantee program. If no such obligations are found, the First Citizens Trustee Services Limited is notified that the borrower qualifies for participation in the loan guarantee program. First Citizens Trustee Services Limited then advises the bank accordingly, the relevant commercial bank accordingly, and the funds required to secure the guarantee are blocked and allocated to the approved borrower under our escrow account. The maximum response time between notification of the pending application by the bank and the Tobago Development Fund's determination is going to be 7 business days. At most 7 business days. The First Citizens Trustee Services Limited is responsible for submitting periodic reports to the Tobago House of Assembly through the Tobago Development Fund regarding the loans disbursed under this guarantee program. Let's talk now about the disbursement of the loan funds. To maintain prudent financial oversight and ensure that the loan proceeds are utilized strictly in accordance with the purposes for which it was intended, and as far as practicable, be released in structured phases. So we have asked the bank to look at the disbursement of the fund in structured phases. Wherever feasible, payments would be made directly to the third-party suppliers or the service providers linked to the authorized use of funds. So it is not strictly to the service providers, but where applicable. This disbursement approach is intended to minimize the risk of misallocation and reinforce transparency and accountability in the administration of the loan financing. The disbursement schedule and the loan agreement shall detail agreed milestones, payment intervals, and disbursement methods. The borrower must ensure that the loan funds are used strictly for the purposes outlined in the loan agreement. Any deviation from the approval of the approved use shall constitute a breach of the financing terms. Should it become necessary to redirect the funds towards an alternative use, the borrower must obtain prior written authorization from both your lending institution, that is any of the three commercial banks, as well as the Tobago Development Fund, before such allocation is made. So let me once again inform the people of Tobago that the loan guarantee program has been in operation for about a year. We have since reduced the minimum of the guarantee to allow you Tobagonians to access this program. And I'll now provide you with details of the persons that you can access if you wish to get further details on the loan guarantee program. You can call the Division of Finance, Trade and the Economy. It's now the Tobago Development Fund. It's the Business Development Unit, which is now a unit under the Tobago Development Fund at 639-4412, extension 53130. That is extension 53130 or extension 53215. Again, if you wish to access information on the loan guarantee program, you can call 639-4412, extension 53130 or 53215, or you can email TDFUND, that is tdfund@finance.tha.gov.tt. Again, you can email tdfund@finance.tha.gov.tt. And I now hand you over to the Honorable Chief Secretary to conclude the press conference, and if you have any further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary Roberts. So we'll just take the questions at this time. I see we have Nicholas from Guardian Media Limited, followed by Ms. Williams, TV6, followed by Ms. Green, Tobago Updates, and then we end with Mrs. Thompson Forbes. So, Mr. Nicholas? Are you there, Mr. Nicholas, Guardian Media Limited? Okay, so we're not hearing Mr. Nicholas, so can I move on to Ms. Williams, TV6?
Good afternoon to members of the THA, Honorable Chief Secretary, and of course, Mrs. Petal Ann Roberts. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I just have a few questions, and I know that you you will write them down.
Sure.
I don't know if you mentioned it before, with respect to the fisher folk in Lambo, Tobago. They have a situation where they are claiming that they have not been compensated in terms of oil spill monies. I know you spoke to this last December on the campaign trail, so I don't know if you can give us an update on the matter, but I know that you spoke about it on the campaign trail, Mr. Chief Secretary. I don't know if you mentioned it before, Mr. Chief, about if any Tobagonians are in the Middle East and if arrangements are being made to have them come home safely. And Mr. Chief, in terms of moves towards a referendum, I know that a motion was passed at the Assembly Chamber, an historic one for the people of Tobago moving forward with respect to Tobago's autonomy. Just wanted to know your feelings on this, because I know you have repeated as Chief Secretary that Tobago's autonomy efforts are being made to have this addressed by the end of this year. I don't know if it has been brought to your attention, Mr. Chief Secretary. A structure is being built on the Hope Beach. Some persons are upset about it, and they are stating that the structure might be one being built by the Tobago House of Assembly. So I don't know if you are aware of this at this time. This question is for Mrs. Petal-Ann Roberts, Finance Secretary. How many businesses have signed on to the program thus far in terms of the loan guarantee program? Some persons are saying this is not for small businesses, because some small businesses are looking at having access to this loan guarantee, but they don't have enough funds in terms of per year to access the loan guarantee. So those are some of my questions at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Thank you for raising the issue with the fisher folk in Lambo. As a matter of fact, I had intended to speak to it. So two things are happening, because I did in fact talk about it on the campaign trail. We have a handful of fisher folk in Lambo who did not receive any compensation, one, and two, who what we now call by abbreviation ITOF has not approved. And that's because these fisher folk operate pretty much informally, and ITOF only treats with persons who are operating in the space formally. Notwithstanding, the THA took a decision that whether you were operating formally or informally, you should receive some support. And I don't use the term compensation, because compensation would suggest that the THA has been liable for the oil spill. We were not liable for the oil spill. We did not cause the oil spill. We are providing support to our fisher folk. And those in that industry there in Lambo should have received the support a long time ago. As a matter of fact, it's very irritating to know that we will put measures in place as an executive. We will ensure all the necessary releases and so on are done, and the support does not meet the people who are supposed to get it. If you were in my staff meeting that I had 2 weeks ago, I said to those there, I said, look, when you are called to take action based on a file before you, you're not really doing it for the Chief Secretary, you're doing it for the people of Tobago. But in this particular issue, we are also investigating a claim that someone said that a public officer at the division told them that they must pay something to get their check. You have to pay nothing to get your check. Let me be clear. You don't have to pay anything to get your check. The secretary reported to me that one gentleman came to the division after being called by the division. He went with the gentleman to accounts to collect his check. Accounts said one person was not in that day to sign. That person was on bereavement leave for 2 days. He was to return after 2 days to collect said check. After the time came to return for his check, he's now being told that there is no check being prepared for him, or he's not entitled to the check. All of that is being investigated and should not have happened. And we're looking to see if in the shortest possible time, within a 2-week period, we could have this matter resolved for the fisher folk in Lambo. In terms of if we have any citizens in in the Middle East. I'm sure that they are. How am I sure? I received while here at the press conference, if you see me taking note, is because I received at the press conference from Assembly Member Nigel Tate, from the parents or the family of a 19-year-old who actually traveled from Tobago on the 23rd of February 2026 to attend the candidate weekend at NYU Abu Dhabi, right? At NYU Abu Dhabi. And they were scheduled to return today. Of course, all flights are cancelled. The family is indicating that he's safe. The young man's name is Raylon. He's a university student with NYU. That he's safe, that they're still being held at at a hotel there in Abu Dhabi. I wouldn't give the name of the hotel. And certainly the family reached out. I received this message at 11:15 a.m. The family reached out to essentially ask if we can do an intervention. So I will have to have a conversation with the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs to see what Trinidad and Tobago is doing in terms of its citizens who might be stuck abroad. And then I'll be able to give a detailed response in terms of what we can do. But certainly as Chief Secretary, I received the contact number and I will reach out to the family members today to let them know that they have our support in whatever is needed. The challenge is that if the airport remain closed and flights cannot leave, then it is difficult for us to do an extraction of any member. It's about ensuring that they are safe where they are and they have access to shelter, food and water where they are at right now. But we are monitoring that situation. As a matter of fact, all throughout the night, my television was stuck on Al Jazeera, just keeping updated with what's happening there. Thirdly, what's the feelings on autonomy and the emotion that was passed. As a matter of fact, when we discussed it at the Exec Council meeting, prior to me departing for St. Kitts, we decided we wanted to go into the House and have this as our first major motion. Because when I tell you I want us to move quickly, I want us to move efficiently and quickly. Speed and efficiency can happen in the same room. And I want to break it down like this. I was just at St. Kitts, Nevis, and I look at some of the powers the government in Nevis has and what it resulted in terms of the development on that island and how they are managing their own affairs. And I'm saying, but Tobago is much larger. Tobago's population is larger than the entire population of St. Kitts and Nevis. The entire population. Nevis only has 13,500 people now, as per the 2022 census. Our population is the entire country of St. Kitts and Nevis has about 53,000. We have gone past 60,000 now, and yet we still struggling to get this done. And my insistence is that by the end of this calendar year, we must have those bills before Parliament. We must have it passed. That will then give us a period in which we do the necessary bill out, because it's not a matter of passing it today and everything falling in place the next day. We will need some time thereafter to bill out all of the structures, the forms, and so on of the government. And so we need to get going this year. No excuses. We get going this year. And so I'm very proud of my team and how they were able in my absence to acquit themselves in the House. The structure it's not on the beach. It is alongside Hope Beach, but it is not on Hope Beach. There is a barrier of trees between the property being constructed and the beach, and that will be a district office, a Teche district office for the entire district that runs from Goodwood, Mount St. George, Hope, John Dale, all the way to the Bacolet Health Center. And that's a district office for Assembly Member, Ms. Megan Morrison. What folks don't know is that there are two ways in which members have access to district offices. One is either members go out and pay a rent for an office, or two, members utilize a government quarters or government building if one is available. My office at Speyside is in a government building. I am looking to have a second office on the north side. I will have to rent because there is no government building. I'll have to rent, or I have to do like Ms. Morrison and have one built. But yes, it will be a district office. It will be there as a permanent presence for the people in that district. And now to the question for the SMEs and how the SMEs are being treated with those who need access to funding.
Right, so to answer your question, Ms. Williams, we have 7 applications. My last information, I was last informed by the Tobago Development Fund that there were 7 loan applications across the commercial banks in Tobago, and they are not yet to the point of the loan guarantee because there are challenges in terms of compliance. So unfortunately, our Tobago businesses are not compliant in terms of its Board of Inland Revenue tax compliance, as well as national insurance contributions, as well as the ability for these companies to provide management accounts. Those are some of the challenges that we face. Last night we did raise it at the meeting with the Chamber, and the Chamber has committed to provide technical assistance. Under the Division of Finance, I've also asked the Business Development Unit and the Tobago Development Fund to provide that kind of technical assistance to our Tobago businesses. I also met with the Institute of Chartered Accountants last Monday, and I've also raised the issue of training, and I asked them some of the training programs that they wish to execute in this year, and there are 2 income tax and corporation tax and tax compliance workshops that I will actually sponsor businesses in Tobago to attend, especially for those who cannot attend, and that will be through the Tobago Development Fund. Ms. Williams, I also want to let you know that as you said, there are some businesses that are saying that this is over their heads. They cannot reach the minimum, and therefore I've decided to raise the loans under the Business Development Unit to $300,000. The loan cap right now is $250,000, so in this year I intend to raise the loans to $300,000, and I've asked the Business Development Unit to let us look at shifting the policy and making the loans more attractive. Some of the purposes for which these loans would be used for are to digitize businesses. So for instance, you would like to purchase point of sale equipment and machine, software, anything to make your business more efficient, anything to make your business more digitized and modernized. We will be funding first call and as priority those businesses. We also have the business development grants up to $25,000 for those businesses that need just a little cash capital injection for the purchase of inventory and equipment. So for those businesses that have gone to their commercial banks and feels that it is out of their reach, we still have our financing options at the Division of Financial and Economy for you to access.
I thank you very much. And let me just point out before I go to Ms. Green, who is next, that when this program started, it came as a recommendation from the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber at the time, its local president at the time, even made a recommendation of the officer we should hire to help manage this. It has been a long process because initially we got some pushback from the banks about onboarding it, and we worked until we got it in stream now with the efforts of persons like Ms. Vernie Shield, who came to us recommended from the Chamber at that time. At this time I take Ms. Green to make updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chief Secretary and Finance Secretary, good afternoon to you. I have questions. I'm just going to present them and we can move from there, I hope. One question is in terms of the private sector. You mentioned, Chief Secretary, the building of warehouses, factories, etc. And I am assuming that you meant perhaps at Cove. What is the status of the land titleship for Cove? You did mention at the last presser you did that EDCOT was not in possession of the titleship to be able to give titleship to businesses. So we want to know what is the status of EDCOT on this matter, and what is the status of the request from the THA for the non-objection letters or the sovereign guarantee from the government. My next question is, what is the status of the two new divisions, especially the legal affairs division, which is under Secretary Councillor Adana Joseph Wallace, and this especially is pertaining to the autonomy bill that Chief Secretary you're hoping to fast track. And the second new division, which we're not hearing anything else about since the administration of oaths, which is the Strategic Planning and Development Division under the Secretary, Assemblyman Trevor James. We're looking to find out what is the status of buildings for those divisions, staffing, date of commencement and or opening. And also in terms of the THA on the progress of the Scarborough Rehabilitation Project, because I'm hearing some things from the campaign trail and the blueprint that was rolled out, but I'd like to know if we can get an update in terms of the Scarborough Rehabilitation Project. And my final question for the Chief Secretary, has the structure being erected in Hope received the EMA certificate of clearance? And I'm only asking this because I'm hearing it's close to the beach. So in terms of the beach proximity, has it received that clearance? And for the Finance Division Secretary, I want to reiterate what colleague Liz said in terms of the medium and small businesses, but this is in terms of the threshold. So the revenue threshold being required for businesses to access the loan is 3 times that of the loan amount. And that some businesses are reporting that it may be too high for them to be able to access the loan. So while they may have some of the other things, they're compliant, they have the registration, they don't make that amount of money to be able to get a loan. Could you just provide some clarity if this is indeed a hindrance? If they don't make 3 times whatever they're asking for, will they or will they not be able to access the loan? I'm sorry, I had 2 other questions, and these are in terms of the current affairs that's happening. And again, Chief Secretary, these 2 are for you. So, you know, in terms of the military aggression happening in the Middle East, the government has put out a statement of support, which has been posted to the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Facebook page. But does the THA support the government's support of the U.S. military action in the Middle East? And the Chief Secretary also mentioned Cuba's humanitarian crisis, and this has been initiated, this crisis, by the U.S. embargo and blockade. And if you can share with us, if THA has a position on this, could you share with us what that is in terms of this humanitarian crisis that has been created by the U.S. embargo and blockade? Does the THA support this as well?
I thank you very much for your questions. I did speak to the challenge at Cove. The line secretary is here, and she just pointed out to me that they are still working with the lawyers in getting the titleship matter resolved. With regards to your second question about the status of non-objection letters and or sovereign guarantee, arrangements are actually being made right now for meeting between the THA and the Minister of Finance on that regard to see if we can get that matter resolved. But such a request predates the current central government coming into office, actually. Thirdly, your question about the state of the new divisions. On Thursday, and it's more than 2, but on Thursday, they will all come and give an update. Those divisions have, in fact, started their work. As a matter of fact, based on the law, once I pronounce it, those divisions start their work. So it's just administrative work that's happening to ensure that the wheels are turning as they would in other divisions. But I will have them come and do a full status report in terms of where they're at. I'm sure you may or may not have seen that the Secretary for Strategic Planning and Development, he had a public day last week. So they have started having public days, which tells you that they are already up and running. Your next question raised the issue of the Scarborough Rehabilitation Program and Project. Sometime next week, I think we have a large meeting. Sorry, not next week, the week after. We have a large meeting where we'll be treating with some on-land development. We're talking about what will be happening behind the library and opposite there by that car park, and how we will be managing that space and the development works there that will take care of the bus terminus, retail, banking, NIB functions, government offices, a car park, built car park, etc., etc., etc. But we're having internal meetings 2 weeks from today so that we can finalize those plans. And when those plans are finalized, then we will come to you. In terms of the structure at Hope, I can't say with certainty if they have a CEC for there or if a CEC was even required, but we certainly will ensure that the necessary measures are taken place, ensure that there is no damage to the environment. I did say on the campaign trail that I will not be holding back Tobago's development for anybody and any agency, and I meant that, right? We as an island, we are forced to live between the main ridge at the center, most of us, mountains at the center, and the sea on the other end. The sea has been taking the lands from us, and we have been doing nothing in fighting back against the ocean taking the lands from us. There will be requirements for us to take steps in terms of land reclamation. We have to do work along that entire windward coast in protecting the coastline. We brought the Caribbean Development Bank here in about 2022. They estimated that I will need about $1 billion just to fix the windward coastline. And so the response to the environment cannot be to do nothing. Because if we do nothing, we'll end up with nowhere to live and work. There is need for adequate, decent facility for the people between Goodwood, Mount St. George, Hope, John Dial, and Bacolet to have a decent office. The THA was able to provide just lands to an individual in the area. And we're not talking about lands to own, we're talking about making the lands available for the development so that we will have the office done there. The THA didn't pay any contractor. The THA has not expended any sums of monies there for this construction. It's a matter of the THA making the lands available. The structure is being built, and the district will now have access to decent facilities. And let me be clear, I will be very unapologetic in this season of our governance about ensuring that Tobago's development moves, our build development moves to where it needs to get at. It's a simple building. There's no skyscraper there. It's not a massive building. You could drive past. It is not large by any stretch of the imagination. It allows for there to be parking, which is one of the challenges for where the current office is. It allows for there to be safe parking. We also have in the vicinity of that a private person that has I think a fruit stall that sells fruits and vegetables and so on. We are not going to interfere with that person. We are not going to remove that business. In fact, we are inclined to allowing that business to continue operating there. And that business was operating in the same vicinity of this new building all along. I heard no objection when someone from the private community was doing business on the same piece of land. Now is also the owners. I don't have time with the owners. Let the office be built, the office will be open, and let the people in that district have access to the office. End that story, where that is concerned. In terms of, and let me reiterate, I don't have time to waste with state agencies who can move with the speed of my development, right? I will stand on that hill. We will proceed with or without them. We have been having commitment from the AMA that they will work with us, they will work at our pace, and they have demonstrated such, and we will continue to work with them, right? We don't intend to go and mash up the environment. We will continue to work with them, but I'm saying, with or without them, we are moving ahead. In terms of current affairs and the issue in the Middle East, just as I said on the campaign trail, I leave the decision as to Trinidad and Tobago's position on these matters to the central government, who has the legal remit, and the THA will continue to take a position of neutrality on those issues. I mentioned the humanitarian crisis in Cuba, but that's not just because there was a blockade. That's also because Cuba has not had democratic governance. And I pointed out earlier, the Prime Minister was right in asking the question. Those of us who espouse, who want to support undemocratic governance in the region, do you want that for Trinidad and Tobago? Do you want us to stop having a democracy and have a government like theirs, or do you want us to hold on to our democracy? And if democracy is good for us, why not good for somebody else? Just saying. That aside, Tobago will continue to stay out of big people's business, and we will continue to mind Tobago's business and mind our business. Chief among those is the issue of our autonomy, which we're trying to get dealt with at this time. But again, we continue to adopt a position of neutrality on these global issues. Who want to fight who? That's their business. We're not in that. That is their business. Who want to remove whom? That is also their business, not my business. We have serious business here to treat with on the matter. And Secretary, one more question to you.
So just to respond to Joel's concern, I take note of the concern, but the threshold levels are not just out of the sky. We have consulted with the banks in terms of policy on the criteria for accessing loans. However, we will look over the next 6 months and in terms of the traction and the persons applying and actually subscribing to the loan guarantee program, and then we will address it accordingly.
I thank you. And then we have Cassandra Thompson-Forbes.
Good afternoon, Chief Secretary of the Bill and Secretary Roberts. My first question is to Chief Secretary.
Sure.
I know last week I asked a question about the biological benchmark for seaworthiness. Were you able to get that information? That's one. And my other question for Secretary Roberts, I must say that your presentation was very thorough. However, I'd like to find out if the loan guarantee program, if it fits into Tobago's broader economic diversification strategy, how does it fit in? And is it aligned or is it focusing on specific sectors, tourism, agriculture, creative industry? Is there a certain target? And my third question, do you have a time frame or a specific period for measurable economic impact of this program, whether it may be jobs created, revenue growth, anything of that sort? Do you have a time frame for this?
All right.
Thank you.
So Mrs. Thompson-Forbes, I'll ask you to repeat the first question. I think the questions to Secretary Roberts, the last one is if there's a specific time frame for measuring economic impact for this program. Your second question to her was if this is targeted to specific industries or sectors, or if it's broad. And your first question, you may have to repeat your first question to her and the question to me, because it was a bit muffled. So we didn't quite hear those first two questions. Mrs. Thompson Forbes, can you unmute and re-ask your first two questions, if you can, please?
Oh, thank you, Chief.
Right.
So my first question to you was, were there any specific technological benchmark for the Blue Wave family to ensure seaworthiness? You were supposed to get that information for us. And my first question for Ms. Roberts is, how does the loan guarantee program fit into Tobago's broader economic diversification strategy?
I thank you very much for your question. I did ask for the benchmarks. I have not received that as yet from either the ministry or the port. So I will want to keep pressing on that. But let me be clear. If once the vessel is working, once it is safe, once it is seaworthy, once it is capable, then we continue to use the vessel during this contractual period, and we use this period to arrive at a permanent solution. The THA, nor myself, we did not procure the vessel. We are not party to the contract for the vessel. So some of the fine prints and details that you may want, you may really have to ask or inquire of NITCO, who did it on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't want to venture into providing information I don't have, and or to make assumptions based on the information I do have. The minister, through her email to me last week, indicated clearly that the vessel remains seaworthy. The vessel meets all the international benchmarks. Whatever those benchmarks are, I cannot say specifically. If you want, Ms. Thompson Forbes, you can put your email someplace in the chat, and I can share with you the information as I have it. Secretary Roberts.
Ms. Thompson Forbes, thank you very much for your question. As the Chief Secretary did indicate, the loan guarantee program was a program that we actually acceded to the request of the Chamber to have a program that was like one that we had in Trinidad. There are no specific sectors that we are looking at, but I must say to you, once I'm Secretary of Finance, I'm willing to look at how the program is rolled out over the next year, and then we will decide whether we will target any specific sectors. But for now, we have left it open, and as I did indicate, we'll be working with the bank in terms of the information to see whether businesses have been subscribing and what the traction is like, right? So as I said, we will look at the types of businesses that have actually subscribed to the program, and then we will determine whether we will have a strategy as to a specific sector we will have it directed to. Right now, I have collaborated with the Division of Tourism as well as the Division of Food Security for specific grant that we would like to offer to those sectors. The creative sector, this was since the last term, but we were not able to roll it out for the creative sector and also for the APRI sector under food security. But the loan guarantee program for now, as I said, we have left it open. And as you know, the program goes along, we'd look at whether there are major impacts in certain sectors. And if none at all, then we will direct the program to specific sectors. In terms of the economic impact measurement, as the program goes along, I would say within a year, we will look at the impact of this program over the next year. We have started that kind of thing. That's why I have this information, and this brief was able to be presented today, because I've been asking the TDF to give me regular updates, and we have been speaking with the commercial banks. So the actual economic impact is continuous, but I'm going to give myself 1 year before we make any significant changes.
Just an update. I was just received information from the CEO at Yadikot. Conveyancing issues are still ongoing, and the matter is in the court now with regards to the conveyancing over the titleship issues down there at Cove. But let me make this point. Cove is not the only area on the island that we will support this kind of development. So what we'll have to look at as a government is what kinds of incentives we may have to offer to spur people on to do some warehousing, to spur people on to do some factories. We are nearing completion, for example, of a facility at Louis D'Or, the old marketing building in Louis D'Or where they made the dry fish and so on long ago. That's being redone in a way that we will have a space that all our agro-processors can actually just go into the space and they can maximize production. The space will meet all of the ISO standards that are required for even exporting of agro-processed goods, and it will be available to all Tobagonians in the absence of people being able to build factories themselves. So people can upscale their production. People can begin to produce more, and they can do it in an environment that will allow them to get the necessary certification to not just put their goods on supermarket shelves, but also export it. That's just one of the initiatives that we have, trying to ensure we put Tobagonians in a place where we achieve food security. The reality is Tobago will not be able to grow certain crops at a cheaper price or on a larger scale than our competitors right there in Trinidad. That's the honest truth. Just what's available in terms of land space for the island will not allow us to do that. And so we have to look at niche products, one. We have to look at ensuring that we have a safe access to food at all times. And it cannot be that our solution is only to have a boat functional at all times. That doesn't lend itself to food security. And that's why these other initiatives are in train in an effort to ensure that people will always have access. Thompson Forbes, I see your hand again. I don't know if you have a follow-up. And I don't know if Mr. Nicholas is still with us. He was not there when I called on him earlier, so I'm not sure. So, Mrs. Thompson Forbes, that's follow-up. Or maybe the hand was just still up from the previous question. All right. I want to say thank you. Let me just check in case he's there.
Mr. Chief Secretary?
Oh, well,
yes.
I called on you earlier and you were just not responding. So.
Yes. Hello? Mr. Chief Secretary?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Stefan Nicholas, Guardian Media Limited.
Yes.
You mentioned your endorsement for the Prime Minister's position that Trinidad and Tobago will not support non-democratic governments in the region. Yet, a few moments later, you mentioned looking forward to Saudi investments here. I know
please don't
accepted a 94 million grant
please don't
from China.
hold on a second. Please don't misquote me. Please don't misquote me. I was very clear in what I said. I said the Prime Minister took a principled position on the matter with Cuba, and I'm also saying it is her right to do so in law. International relations and these positions are not under the 5th schedule of the Tobago House of Assembly. I also said that the Tobago House of Assembly continues to adopt a position of neutrality, which is the position we took during the recently held election campaign. I went even further to say that when I canvassed and I walked the streets of Tobago, Tobagonians held an almost singular position, which was stay out of it. And I continue to stay out of it. I said today, notwithstanding, I must acknowledge that there may be some humanitarian issues in Cuba owing to the conflict there. I was even as descriptive as saying that I'm really not getting involved in who want to fight who blockading who's stopping who. That's not my business. My position has been, and I stated this during the campaign, and still is, that whoever ends up being leader in whichever place, that is who I will do business with. End of quote. So I don't want you to try to reframe it to advance your agenda. I want you to have it as clearly as I just stated it. Now, if I hear the question you just asked, you may want to ask the Prime Minister if she sees some dissonance between her position in Cuba and China. That will not be a question for me. Because the Prime Minister, using the authority in law, took a principled position, which I don't know we can disagree with as a country, because none of us want our leadership to operate in the same manner as countries that don't have democratically elected leaders. We enjoy democracy. That's why we could have this healthy exchange. We people enjoy calling in on the radio, posting videos online, being critical, even being rude, even being racist in their comments. People enjoy such freedoms. And I will never one day advocate for Trinidad and Tobago to not provide those freedoms to our people. And I'm simply saying, perhaps as a country, we need to take another look at our international relations for consistency across the entire global space and our relations. Because what we perhaps don't like for ourselves, we perhaps should not support for others. But my position at this time remains the same as it was during the campaign. It remains the same as it was over the last 3, 4, 5 months, which is a position of neutrality. And whoever ends up being the leader of wherever in the world, however they get there, I will do business with you. End of story. I am not interested in the details as to how they get there and why they get there and who fight it. That is not for me. That is not for Tobago. Right now we're speaking about our autonomy. That is paramount for us. Perhaps when we get that autonomy, and if that autonomy allows us certain flexibility on international relations, then this is a kind of debate we could drill along in and take other positions that are not as neutral. Nevis, coincidentally, Nevis does not have any authority on international relations either, but they do have some broad powers with regards to borrowing, with regards to the economic investments from foreign direct investments or FDIs, among others, but they don't have any remit over international relations. That comes from the federal government of St. Kitts and Nevis. So that's an interesting thing to look at. What was proposed in the bills that former Chief Secretary London sent to Trinidad that never made its way into the bills that PNM brought, and then they come around claiming that they bring what Tobagonians said they wanted, was that they ought to have been concurrence on these matters, such as national security and international relations, if the matter involves Tobago. But that matter of concurrence mysteriously came out of those bills, did not make its way into those bills. And so it's something for us to consider and agitate for in getting new bills that are aligned to what Tobagonians want before the Parliament this year. So I hope I was able to clear up any misconception in your mind, Mr. Nicholas from Guardian Media. And sorry to stop you, but I want it to be lucidly clear.
Yes. So I just have 2 other questions. You also mentioned previously that if it was your choice, the radar would not be in Tobago. Last 24 hours, we saw Iran attack some of its neighbors hosting U.S. military equipment. A Tobagonian you just mentioned is in one of those countries. Does this validate the concerns over the radar? And my final question, your visit to St. Kitts, you had said was to analyze the progressive autonomy laws there. One of those autonomy laws provides for secession. Ultimately, we know that the referendum, it's the people that would decide. But are you, Mr. Augustine, would you like to see secession as an option whenever autonomy laws are passed?
All right, so the question about the radar, I did see on the campaign. In fact, I remember the very night that question was asked, we were at a meeting in Boko, I believe. And the question was, if I had the authority, would the radar be there? And I said, it's unlikely that the radar would be there if I had the authority, if I had a say. And the reason for that is because I would have engaged in conversations with my people first. But I also made a point at that time that I did not have the benefit of the kinds of conversations that perhaps the Prime Minister then had with her counterparts in the US. And looking back now, looking at the whole situation and how it played itself out, I don't know whether the radar was in Tobago or not, if that would have stopped the US from getting Maduro. And I find that we have glossed over the fact that Maduro was taken, and those that were the strongest allies and supporters of Maduro, those who were swearing by Almighty God that they will protect him, all of a sudden they get quiet. You stop hearing anything from them, no comments about it. You don't know whether they supported the removal of Maduro or not. You see Delcy changing her tune and changing her position on issues because of US power over her and over the country in Venezuela. And one of the things we have to ask ourselves, because we don't understand the pragmatism sometimes, and it might just be that the Prime Minister had more balls than all she male counterparts in the region, because we probably don't understand the pragmatism of the thing, which is the US got rid of Maduro. They always had the power to do so. They always had might and equipment and everything to do so. The Gerald Ford was just off our waters in international waters. That ship had more power, more everything than the whole island of Tobago will ever have probably for the next century. So they didn't even need a radar here, I think, to be able to properly execute what they did. And perhaps we should be asking ourselves now, if the Prime Minister took and adopted a different position than she did, what will be our relationship with the United States now? Would we be among those that will be banned from having visas to the US? Will we be forced, like some of those in the region, to backpedal from our position and now accept from third countries, accept deportees who were not originally citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? I am not hearing those questions being asked, and the practical wisdom perhaps of the decision of the Prime Minister then. I took a different position. Then I said, if I had the power, then the radar probably wouldn't be in Tobago. The Prime Minister took a decision based obviously on the information she had access to. When we look back now, look at how the whole thing played off, then we possibly should say that that was the best decision that she took at that time, given how this thing played itself out. Because perhaps the country would have been rioting today if they knew they couldn't line up by the embassy for a visa, or that they couldn't go and check the family who living abroad and all knowing their green card, that living illegally in the people's place. So let me be consistent and also measure our expectations with some practicality, please. In terms of what is happening in the Middle East now with Iran, again, I don't want to give any more comments on that other than what I have already given. The decisions in terms of what Trinidad and Tobago supports, that rests solely with the central government. This is not a matter that Tobago is involved in any way, save and except that I have just learned of a citizen, and there's possibly more Tobagonians living there who might be panicking and so on, and we will do whatever is necessary, because one of the things my government has prided itself in has been reaching out to members of our diaspora. In fact, we are the only THA government that has ever used the state resources to ensure we stay connected to our diaspora, unlike previous governments who felt the diaspora was only good to send home barrels. We have been more meaningful and purposeful in how we approach our diaspora. And it's a good time to point out that we have in fact completed the support to those students who lived through Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, and we supported them from here. The central government did not have that position, but under my remit in the THA, I have control over social welfare. I could treat with my diaspora people. I could decide policy-wise how we will treat with my people. That's where I have remit. And so we took a decision and we actioned it. For our students there in Jamaica, we will reach out to our citizens who are in the region, in the Middle East. Certainly, I will reach out to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, because I also have to be guided by what the national policy is and ensuring that there is support. The Tobago doesn't have an embassy of its own there. As a matter of fact, I want to point something else out to you. You know, at one time, there was such a thing called a Tobago desk at some of our embassies. The People's Partnership had it, where Tobago had the opportunity to have someone from Tobago appointed at those desks to see about our diaspora relations, our tourism, and so on. And as soon as the government changed, yes, that same government that claimed they love us in Tobago, as soon as the government changed, they abolished that position, pushed it away, pushed it out of the side, and they have these trade desks there now, but these trade desks don't really represent Tobago interests specifically. And so we lost something. And that's something I had a discussion with the current Prime Minister about how we can re-engage to have that going again. But it just goes to show you, that some of the people making a lot of noise now about what Tobago should do and what Tobago shouldn't do, what our position should be and shouldn't be, are the same people who stripped away every piece of privilege we had with international relations, who, when they had an opportunity to provide bills to the Parliament, did not even put elements of concurrence in the bills over matters concerning international relations for Tobago. But yet now they're making noise as though they were in fact offering us privileges that this government is not offering us. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, I was just at CARICOM. How I got there? I had to be credentialed by the central government. They had to allow for me to be there. The THA paid my way. We pay for ourselves to be there. And I had the Secretary for Legal Affairs with me, and I had the Senior State Counsel, which is the head, the head or lead public service lawyer within the THA space, and the three of us, we investigated the matter. You rightfully point out that in the arrangements between St. Kitts Nevis, there is the element of the right to secede. In our proposals for referendum, there won't be a right to secede in the proposal for referendum. But what St. Kitts Nevis did is that they placed in the law with a very high benchmark. I think it might be 2/3 of the population plus 2/3 of the Nevis Island administration must say yes to seceding in order for Nevis to make its departure from the Federation. So that right to self-determination is embedded in the Constitution, in the laws of St. Kitts Nevis. Of course, that is something that we're looking at here to see whether or not that's something the people of Tobago want, and that's something we have to remember. I am not just coming up with these laws and saying this is what I want. We are going to the people of Tobago, and it's based on what they want. That is what will factor or make its way into the proposed legislation. But I am almost certain that that's a matter that will come up and that can possibly make its way into the laws. Of course, with a similar high benchmark, because they don't want, for example, for the union to be separated by just 50 plus 1%, 51% of the people saying, yes, we want to go. That can't work. It has to be a special and high benchmark if we are to have this in the laws. But yes, this is something I am sure will come up in our conversations, in our discussions with the people of Tobago. as we prepare what those pieces of legislation will look like, and as we prepare to have the people of Tobago, give support to what we will take to the Parliament. Final question. We had a follow-up with Mrs. Thompson Forbes, so we'll take that at this time.
Can we get an update on the task force? Apologies. Can we get an update on the task force geared at Tobago's procurement, please? And just going back to Secretary Roberts, I'm not sure if you answered the question, my first question, which was how does the program fit into Tobago's and Tobago House of Assembly's broad economic diversification strategy? I'm not sure if you would have responded to it.
Right. So
that's Thank you.
Right. So I heard the repeating of the last question about how this will impact our broader strategy for diversifying the economy. And the simple answer to that is that indigenous Tobago businesses now have access to funding, another stream of funding that they did not have access to. And that comes with a recognition that there are unique Tobago products and selling points that are respected and acknowledged. There are unique circumstances that this program acknowledges. Circumstances, you heard the Secretary speak about, for example, the fact that if you are behind on some of your statutory payments, but you could show that there are payment arrangements and so on, you will still be considered for this program. Those kinds of elements in the criteria were placed there to make it as easy as possible for Tobago businesses to have access to another stream of income. And we're not just talking traditional businesses, we're talking those that are non-traditional, including those in the agro-processing sector. We did acknowledge that those that are still small and micro, that this program won't work for them because this is above their threshold. And so for those that are still small and micro, they are still being supported through BDO and what will ultimately be the Tobago Development Fund, the TDF, that is on stream now. You mentioned update on task force and then it got muffled. So I'm not sure, Secretary, if it is the team led by Dr. Hazel.
Well, I want to know
so you
for
could,
sure.
You could remind them that they did, you see the notices went out for the data and information. So remind them of such.
Well, the last update on that is that I saw the surveys actually came to me to look at. So the surveys actually went out. So this is just one of the strategies, because I did speak to Dr. Hazel. He said that this is not the only strategy we're going to use to collect the data, but there are persons from the department actually on the ground having conversations with the businesses to actually collate that report. So the work is actually in progress. We have given them about 2 weeks to bring the report and the figures to us.
All right. I just want to point out one thing before we close. Sometimes we hear questions here and have to question whether people are doing their jobs. The district office is already open. So it was I thought they would have opened it to some fanfare, but the district office is already up and running, and people in that electoral district can go to that district office in Hope. So I don't know that people could be asking still what building there when the district office is already there, already operational, and those communities are benefiting. The land assets of the THA are the land assets for the people of Tobago. And that is whether the land asset is next to the sea or way up in the mountainside. It belongs to us. And no, I am not saying that we will go bulldoze our environment and mash up our environment, but I'm also saying that we want to move at a certain pace. We want to press gas. We spent the first 4 years cleaning up a certain mess left by some people who were there for 21 years. The next 4 years is to building, right? And I will not be held back in terms of the speed at which I want this island to build. And I want to end on one note by carrying the example to our next level, because we talk a lot about autonomy today. People don't understand how these agencies and the policies that govern these agencies have stymied our development. You go to Port of Spain, they're building skyscrapers, multi-family dwelling units all over Trinidad, 8 floors, 9 floors. Our tallest building in Tobago is Victor E. Bruce, right? That's our tallest building right now on paper, between that and the Comfort Inn. But you know, one of the reasons why is because we have had traditionally town country planning just saying no. Once you have a building design that goes above a certain number of floors, they just say no. People joke and say, well, if it's taller than a coconut tree, the answer is no. But that is nonsense. Tobago has a limited land space. Limited. We can't continue with horizontal development. We can't continue to build campuses and spread out everything big. We will soon run out of land. We only have 116 square miles. A big chunk of that is the Main Ridge Rainforest. A big portion of that is situated along the coast. So when we're building, we have to now go beyond what we have done in the past and build in a way that we maximize use of space and reduce how much actual land space that we're using. We have to challenge the Division of Housing, Settlements and Public Utilities to build in a way that we're not trying to build individual houses and units for everybody that need a house in Tobago. We had to get to the point of some multi-family dwelling units without building projects or hoods or tenement yards or ghettos, but building sustainable buildings. As a matter of fact, you could build anything almost anywhere and be sustainable. The same people who have issues about that one little office along the main road in Hope, along Bleming there, will go by the Hyatt and stay the Hyatt right in the middle of the ocean. At that time with them kind of hypocrisy there. The office is built, the office is open. That's an example of partnership between THA and the public. There was a need for an office with parking. The THA didn't have the funding to build an office itself. A private member of that electoral district said he will build the office, and he, as his contribution, he will allow Miss Morrison to stay in that office and use that office, and it will be there available whether Miss Morrison remains there or somebody from a next political party comes along and represent the district. It will remain there for use by the district. I see no problem. The building is built. It is operational now. People in that electoral district, please go and see your area rep there. Ms. Morrison now has a decent place to keep all her markets. And she usually have this market where she give out agricultural produce to her district and so on. It has parking. I'm sure the parking will not just support her office, but it will also support the private business that is next door. I've said it. Before let's start to make bacchanal, there is no intention, certainly not from my executive, and I will check in with land management to make sure that they haven't done anything untoward to the private people that they're operating. But a private business has been there. They have been operating for a while, and the executive has always felt that private business should be given the full authorization to keep operating and to build out permanently there, because the commercial activity is warranted in the space. They will not be removed from the space, certainly not with me here as Chief Secretary. I will check in on Info Division to see what's there. And finally, I know I said finally many times, Tuesdays are designated as days for area reps to go into their electoral district. When I say area reps, all area reps, every single area rep, all 15 area reps are mandated to go into the electoral district on a Tuesday, certainly by Tuesday afternoon. That might be at the office, that might be in one of your villages. Like in my case, I've been going village to village. I'm sure you might have seen online when I was in Palatavie and did some work there, when I was in Castara and so on, when I was in Charlottesville. So I'm going village by village, but every single Tuesday afternoon, all area reps, whether you are secretary or not, you are mandated to be in an electoral district, and divisions are mandated to find a way to get the files to them. So if there are things that are urgent, files that need attention, each division has drivers and they have vehicles. They jump in the vehicle and drive to wherever they have to drive to and get the documents processed from the electoral district. But we're not compromise. I am not compromising on that as a leader in giving that mandate to all area representatives. They're either at the electoral district or they're either in the village or looking at projects or on the field, but they must be somewhere in their electoral district on a Tuesday afternoon or by Tuesday afternoon for the latest. The only one that should have a challenge really should be me, because my district is the most rurally located. I have to drive the furthest and drive more than anybody else, but everybody else within 30 minutes from town, they should be in their district. For me, if I use that same 30 minutes rule, I could only go to Castara, right? So my district is vast, but every one of us in our districts every Tuesday afternoon. So you could look forward to that as time progresses. Thank you very much. Enjoy this Sunday. I think I took a lot of time away from your Sunday lunch. Have a good one. Have a safe weekend, what's left of the weekend, and a productive week ahead. God richly bless you.